私が教えたことは全部覚えているよね。はい。好きにすればいい。
That's another great attribute of a great mentor or leader. You don't impose your way onto your mentees. Then you're just trying to mold them to become Benoit 2.0 or Frieren 2.0. Welcome to Discover More. My name is Benoit Kim, a UPenn educated psychotherapist, and I will be decoding the human condition and relevant psychological concepts from each video that I watch. What does Frieren Beyond Journey's Ends Episode 2 reveal about delayed grief, stages of grief, the importance of rituals and healing, and selective attention and memory formation? Let's tune in.
さっきは途中で魔法が離散してしまったね。魔力の量と打ち出す力が足りないことを示している。才能に関わらず何年もかけていかなければいけないよ。
In the last episode 1, we talked about Frieren's hesitance to take on a mentee or apprentice mage because they die a lot in the battles, and it's her way of defending or defensive mechanism to make sure that she doesn't get hurt and she doesn't experience the grief or the sadness about losing another loved one, in this case, her mentee. But you can tell that she's still giving her very detailed deconstruction of her skill sets, that, hey, Fern, you're very talented, but you still need years to master your stamina, your magic stamina. So even though she was resisting and hesitant to take her under her wing, you can tell that Frieren is still fulfilling her duty as a semi-pseudo-mentor in this case. So we'll see how their mentorship or their relationship develop in this episode.
コールする力はとても高いみたいだね。みんなそこで手こずるんだけど、その心配はなさそうだし、気長に取り組むことだね。
That's a attribute and characteristics of a great mentor or any great leader. You always start with the praise. You start with positive affirmation. Hey, your natural talent is very great. Hey, you're really skilled at drawing. You're a skilled communicator. You have great work ethics, and so on. So you start with the positives. You always start with the praise to create a safety net psychologically and emotionally. And then you provide constructive feedback. In this case was, hey, Fern, you're a great natural gifted mage. I almost said magician, mage. But you need to spend years to master your craft. So that's a great setup for a mentor and a great feedback session. I guess quitting drinking for the bishop towards the end of his life really helped him with his physique and body. And I love how this show glimpses through and passes through so many seasonality of life, just a quick animation. It's very, I guess, succinct and very straight to the point. Not too much filler content as of yet. Not like Naruto. What is this about Japanese men, in this case the bishop, loving sunbathing so much, huh? I mean, I've been to Japan. Anyone that's been to Japan know their hot springs are amazing. But also, a little bit of perversive nature in almost every anime and every Japanese production. It's not a diss. But it is interesting to see in this, even in this comical portrayal of the bishop just enjoying sunbathing. But it's very interesting that they always include nude men or something provocative in the shows, even in a very comical way.
フェルンの修行は順調ですか？
常人なら10年かかる道を4年で越えた。
Whoa. Since episode 1, it's already been 4 years. I mean, with temporal perception, which we talked about in last episode, check out below if you haven't seen it. They really fly through time in this episode. They do not mess around. I mean, what by the end of episode 28, it's going to be 10,000 years? We'll see.
あまりいいことじゃない。
最近ずっと森にこもりきりですからね。それだけ魔法が好きなのでしょう。
So this is interesting. The bishop said that she must really love magic. That's why she's spending all of her time studying and refining and improving her magic. But Fern initially told Frieren in the last episode, towards the end, that she somewhat likes magic. So I think that, here's my speculation. I could be wrong down the line with this episode. But my speculation is that Fern is not that she's practicing because she loves magic so much. It's because she appreciates the mentorship and the guidance of Frieren. She enjoys the mentorship. And a lot of people, like I said earlier, I think that Fern comes from a lifelong journey of trauma and a lot of adverse childhood experiences. I don't know the details yet because we're only in the beginning of episode 2. But when individuals like Fern and a lot of my clients who come from such a high ACEs score and childhood trauma, they like to identify a single marker, a hallmark that gives them this approval, this self-esteem. Yes, I come from a broken family. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I went through X, Y, and Z trauma. But at least I have approval for my magic. At least I have approval for my work ethics. A lot of overachievers, myself included, we like to put our self-worth in a box, in a container of working hard, successful businesses, prestigious degrees, and so on. And that's a compensatory mechanism. We're compensating for a lack of self-esteem in many cases, and our lack of stable family or happy family growing up. We're compensating that with our work ethics. And I think in this case, that might be applicable to Fern, but we shall see. But what do you guys think about that? Can anyone of you guys relate to this? And do you also fall under this compensation or compensatory mechanism? It's not good or bad. It's just part of our defensive mechanism, trying to make the best of our unfortunate circumstances for many of us.
そうですか。
この魔導書だけど多分
Uh-oh.
ハイター
It said last episode she said it takes about 5 to 6 years to decipher, and it's been 4 years. But looks maybe Heiter or the bishop may not live to see the day. Or maybe that was just a cover-up. That was a fake request because Heiter and the bishop knew he would not live for another 5 or 6 years. But the true intention and the true request was for Frieren to take Fern under her wing as an apprentice mage. And almost like you're giving away your offspring or your family members that's left behind to an entrusted friend, in this case Frieren. So we'll see if that was his intention or not.
そんな顔をしないでください。
It's not
今ま
looking
でまと
good.
もに動けていた方が奇跡だったのです。
魔導書の解読急ぐよ。
お願いします。
フェルン、修行は中止だ。
まだ一番位は打ち抜けておりません。
That comment from Fern suggests what I just said earlier. She is putting all of her self-worth into the basket of becoming a proper mage. But you can only be a proper mage if you put a hole through that rock, which is what Heiter, the bishop, said. That's why she's saying that, but I still haven't become a proper mage, because that is her entire identity. That is her identity formation, and that is her self-worth.
今はい
ずれではダメなのです。いずれではハイター様が死んでしまう。
Fern wants to make Heiter proud before he passes away. So it's not just approval for her, and it's not just self-worth, it sounds like. It's that, and she wants to make him proud because she might be coming from a broken family, and maybe Heiter and the bishop was the first person to take her in. That's why this means the life. This means everything to her. Very touching.
私はあの方に命を救われました。
今死ぬのはもったいないと思いますよ。
Wow, this show really does not mess around with grief and heavy emotions. In episode 1, of course, Himmel passed away from long age. And in this episode, looks like the bishop is near his deathbed. And now we're talking about Fern's potential suicide attempt that the bishop stopped. So this show is very heavy on real heavy emotions and grief. But grief and heavy emotions are part of the human experience. And it is part of the human condition. So this is a very deep anime.
私とは違ってひたすらにまっすぐで、私ではなく彼が生き残っていれば多くのものを救えたはずです。 私がこのまま死んだら勇気や意志や友情やらなくなってしまうのではないかと。
So in the last episode 1 review, I talked about the function of regrets. Here, the bishop is saying that because I'm not like Himmel, I won't be able to be as helpful or compassionate and save as many people because of their personality differences. But it's both right here. It's concept of comparison and concept of regrets. The bishop does not want to have regrets, especially as he's getting older, near his death. That's why he had this profound realization to do something about it, so that all the lessons he learned from his dear late friend Himmel are not wasted. And here's another interesting thought about the function or the purpose of comparison. Comparison syndrome does not help anyone. There is a famous quote saying that comparison is a thief of joy. When we compare what we have and other people, we usually put ourselves down, because comparison psychologically usually looks like this. I compare what I lack with what they have. I compare what they're good at with what I'm bad at. I compare my weakness to their strength. It's a very lopsided, uneven, and unfair and unjust comparison. That's why comparison is not very helpful. It only makes us feel bad, like regrets do. But some of us, and there is a healthy way of using comparison. Instead of beating ourselves up by comparing our lack with what they do have, you derive helpful data, like what the bishop's doing here beautifully. He's comparing himself with Himmel, but instead of making himself feel bad, he's actually doing something about it. He's like, I'm not like Himmel, but I can do something in my own meaningful way so that our friendship is not wasted. That is a healthy purpose of comparison, and comparison is a universal thing for humans. I will never tell my clients that, hey, don't compare. It's like telling people, hey, are you nervous? Don't be nervous. When does that ever work? Trick question, it never works. So comparison is part of our human nature, but what we can do is just compare our weaknesses and recognize that, oh, this is a skill set. I can develop this. I could get better at this. So instead of beating ourselves up, let's use regrets and comparison to empower us and to inform our next decision. So it's better, it's more optimal. And that's what Bishop here is demonstrating beautifully.
あなたの中にも大切な思い出があるとすれば、死ぬのはもったいないと思います。
あの方は正しいことをしたのです。救ったことを後悔してほしくない。一人で生きていく術を身につけることが私の恩返しなのです。
Oh, I see. I just got some goosebumps again. So when Frieren initially asked Fern the power of why from last episode that I reviewed, she was asking, do you like magic? And I believe Fern said, I somewhat like magic. And Frieren was able to smile because that was a good answer. So now it's revealed that Fern somewhat likes magic, and she's not a hardcore devoted mage wannabe, is because she was doing this mainly for Heiter, the bishop, for saving her life. So this is her way of paying back for his grace and graciousness to take her in. So it's not neither here or there, but I think we can also talk about intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic is internal, it's driven, it's our calling. It tends to be more long-lasting versus the ebbs and flow of motivation, since motivation is fleeting, versus extrinsic is what we derive from external sources. I want to make my parents proud. I want to be successful so I can pay off my parents' debt. Those are powerful motivation. But typically, intrinsic motivation is way more powerful than extrinsic, because intrinsic is internal, it's within us. So we'll see how that unfolds for Fern with her mage journey.
私が教えたことは全部覚えているよね。
はい。
好きにすればいい。
That's another great attribute of a great mentor or leader. You do not impose your values and you do not impose your ways, since I have a lot of mentees of my own. You don't impose your way onto your mentees. then you're just trying to mold them to become Benoit 2.0 or Frieren 2.0. Instead, what Frieren does beautifully again is she asks about the reasons, she makes a request, but when Fern rejects the request because of her higher calling to make the bishop proud, she listens attentively, and she's like, that's a great reason. That's why we saw a quick glimpse of Frieren smiling. I like how it's always a quick glimpse. And then she's like, okay, you remember everything I taught you? Fern says, yes. All right. Then you do whatever you want. That's the sign of a great mentor, is that you don't just impose, but you propose what you know and you propose your expertise. And you trust that your mentee is an independent being of their own. You trust that your mentee can rise up to the occasion. That's a great mentor. Whoa! Did the whole rock disappear? Did the whole cliff disappear?
死者の蘇生も不死の魔法も書かれていなかったよ。
I knew it.
そうです。
I knew it was a trap.
知っていたの？
死への恐怖は計り知れないものです。
I knew the request to decipher this spell was a trap. I knew the true intention, the underlying intention is for Frieren to take Fern underneath her wing. And he succeeded. That was a great chess move. Great chess move, my friends.
じゃあなぜ？
フェルンはどうなりましたか？
一人前と言っても遜色のないレベルだよ。
間に合いましたか？もう足手まといではありませんね、フリーレン。
Wow, I just got goosebumps.
連れて行ってくれませんか？
足手まといになるから。
Wow.
分かったな、ハイター。
There is a term in forensic psychology, since I'm also a forensic psychotherapist. I work in the forensic core mandated setting. There is a term called benign manipulation. And I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but benign manipulation is only appropriate when you know the other person really well and you 100% believe that what you're about to do, I guess so-called air quote white lie, is helpful and serves a greater purpose. We call that benign manipulation. It's very nuanced, and this is not a forensic content channel by any means, but we can also describe what the Heiter did as benign manipulation. Or I guess Frieren's like, you lied to me.
立ってください。
何のつもり？
長くはありません。誰かを失うような経験をさせたくないのです。もう頼みましたよ。
Another chess move right here, where the bishop is bestowing his final dying wish, the most paramount of significance, onto Frieren. So he knows that she can't say no, and she definitely won't say no, because the only excuse that she had about apprentice mage dying a lot is no longer. So this is the ultimate chess move. Of course, again, in a very benign way, because objectively, having Fern under Frieren's wing, it's not going to impact Frieren. She's a very powerful elf mage. So I do think that this is a twofold intention. Is the bishop is trying to ensure, point one, that Fern has someone that's guiding her, taking care of her. But point two, as a longtime dear friend to Frieren, I think the bishop is trying to make sure that Frieren is also not too lonely, and she has a human companion, not just any companion, but a mentee mage where she could teach and have positive discourse and conversations with. Very powerful and very, very beautiful. And this is part of the human conditions, empathy and longing.
ハイター、お前が死ぬまでにやるべきことは、あの子にしっかりと別れを告げて、の思い出を作ってやることだ。
フリーレン、あなたはやはり優しい子です。
I know I'm talking a lot, guys, and I know this is a lot of commentary, but this is so profound. What Frieren just said, and even that's an indication of her evolution and improvement from her emotional development and personal development compared to episode 1. She went from someone that's seemingly aloof, blocking out all emotions, especially negative ones, to protect herself, to now she's openly crying versus crying in a delayed way at the funeral for Himmel in episode 1. And not just that, she went even a step further and a level deeper. She's saying that no, do not avoid from sorrow. No, do not run away. Do not try to protect Fern from this anticipatory grief. She's got it. She's mature. But also, you need to have closure for Fern and also for the bishop. Closure is a very powerful clinical term, and every grief counseling, which I do often, every grieving process, rituals or otherwise, you need to have a closure. Also for dating. In 2025, in this modern age, in this modern dating era, how many of us skip out on and bypass the closure stage? Oh, we broke up, we had a fight. I don't want to deal with the anxiety or the nervousness of breaking up with you and having a human to human conversation in person. So what do? We block them on social media. We block them and mute them on Instagram. We block their numbers. So even if they want to reach out, they cannot, because they cannot find you and they've been blocked on every front. On the surface, this seems like, oh, I avoided and I skipped out on the fraught nature of confrontation and breaking up in person. Whew, I got away. That's a win. But it's not. You skipped out on the healing process. You skipped out on the grieving process. You skipped out on the processing to say goodbye and to break up, which is the integrity and the dignity that every human deserves. Especially if you've been dating for a long time, or if not even a long time. You've shared once a lifetime memories together. You shared this common human experience that we call life. We need to give other people and vice versa the dignity of breaking up in person so that they could have closure, but also more importantly, we could have closure to close a loop on this relationship for better or worse. And that's what Frieren is talking about here. Closure is a necessary part of any healing and any grieving process. Beautiful. I mean, he is a priest. Wow. Rest in peace.
ありがとうございました。おかげでハイター様。
私はただしてやられただけだよ。
Frieren has come a long way as a long-living, air-quote, immoral elf, but she still has these subtle defense mechanisms to try to suppress her true desire. She's saying that, oh no, he just tricked me. She knows deep inside that this was a great thing and a great win for everyone. So it's still interesting that throughout our healing and our developing and evolution of growth, we still see this self-sabotage or these unhealthy things coming up. And that's not a bad thing. It's just part of the process.
じゃあ行こうか。
That's a big pumpkin. 26 years. This show does not mess around with time. Wow.
こちらは約束の報酬です。
てくる魔法だって。後で実験しよう。
銅像の錆をきれいに切る魔法。それまた前は甘いブドウをするですね。
趣味だからね。
フリーレン様は本当に魔法がお好きなのですね。
ほどほどだよ。フェルンと同じで。
Good callback.
少し違うような気がします。
同じだよ。
We are the same. I think we're foreshadowing the actual character development and upbringing for Fern, and maybe foreshadowing Frieren's upbringing as well, however long time that may be. She insisted saying that we are the same, and Frieren knows Fern pretty well at this point because she'd been taking care of her. They've been spending time together with the bishop and all that, but I'm sure Fern doesn't know too much about Frieren. But for Frieren to say that we are the same, it means that Frieren also comes from a broken past and a lot of trauma. So we'll see how that develops.
勇者ヒンメル様の像ですか。
Rest in power. 26 years later, after his passing. What a cool guy.
村が魔物に襲われた時必死に戦ってくれたのに。
村人が像を建てるって言った時に断っていればよかったんだ。
イケメンすぎない？
ポーズ18時間のような職人さんをブチギレさせるし結局
不思議なこと言うのね。
What a strange story, because again, Frieren has come a long way, like I said, but she's still somewhat, pun intended, subconsciously suppressing her emotions of grief. And this could be an indication that she has not fully done her grieving work and healing work. She has not fully healed and grieved Himmel's death properly. That's why she's still subconsciously trying to suppress, saying that no, it's his fault. And that's why it is a strange story. But everything she says has so much psychological undertone.
ここにはエルフの魔法使いがいたわね。
Elven mage, that's her.
助かったわ。彩りが欲しいわね。後で花でも植えよう。
今日出す魔法使いましたよね。
そうだね。
Wow.
何か適当な花でもがいいか。それはどのようなない見たことないから。
What?
ではなぜ？
ヒンメルの故郷の花だ。ここら辺にはもうないの？
絶滅してはもう何十年もないわ。
Wow, this show also talks about climate change?
何か隠したね。怒らないから見せなさい。シードラットだね。
Are they seed rats or just gray squirrels? Maybe it's different in this world.
実物を見つけて分析すれば草月草の花を咲かせる
ヒンメル様のためですか？
いや、きっと自分のためだ。
I am probably doing this for myself. Her self-awareness is pretty incredible, and she is getting better through her evolution of personal development. I think she's recognizing that her grieving process is incomplete. And that's why I think she's doing this to get the flowers from Himmel's hometown and then plant it back here. Even though that's a long journey and a lot of hassle, I think she's recognizing that with her self-awareness. And she's trying to continue and or complete her grieving process from Himmel 26 years down the road. Very good self-awareness. Oh boy, how many years is gonna go by with this animation this time? 2,000 years later.
2,000 years later.
You can tell from these glimpses of animation that Frieren has really taken a liking and fond of Fern and truly views her as her own. It's like that Asian mom looking at their kids through a sight of approval from far away. That's what that looked like to me. Or like a proud teacher.
探し始めてからもう半年になりますね。
Oh, it's only been 6 months, not 2,000 years.
そろそろ
Good.
検索範囲を広げようか。
一人だなんて珍しいわね。あなたたちが
癒着は異常です。このままでは何年でも何十年でも探し続けてしまう。多くの人を救える力を持った魔法使いです。ありもしないもののために時間を使うだなんてあってはならないことです。
This is interesting. A sign of depression cognitively is we see everything through negative biases. That's the conceptualization for CBT, cognitive behavior therapy for depression. When you're depressed, typically everything seems like gray. You become more pessimistic, you lose hope, you lose excitement, you become apathetic, you lose interest in the things you used to love, and so on. And of course, there's different severity since depression is a cluster of symptoms, not just one. Now she's saying that yes, Fern is saying that yes, there is an opportunity cost. That Frieren is an amazing mage. She should be spending her time saving as many quantifiable of people as possible. Utilitarianism. And she should not waste her time looking for flowers that don't exist. So yes, there is an opportunity cost. But I also wonder if this is a feature and a sign of Fern's depression, that to her, this is just meaningless. It's a waste of time. Everything's bleak and gray anyway. So what's the point?
私の考えは間違っているのでしょう。
フリーレンさんにとっては違うのでしょうねが、私たちよりもずっと大人を素直に伝えればきっと分かってくれるはずよ。
Honesty is always best method. Look at her smile.
薬効があるため保管されていたヒメル様の像の周りに植えるというのは
心配させてしまったね。もう少し探したら切り上げるよ。
少しって何年ですか？あなたは本当に諦めが。
Do you guys think that Fern's concern is valid? I mean, that is a good question. How long is soon? Soon to Frieren is like 100 years, literally. I'll stop by a few times at the Holy City from episode 1. Literally once in 50 years, or I guess twice in 100 years after defeating the Demon King. So that is a good question. How soon is soon? We do need to define it because Frieren is an elf and she lives forever. But do you think that this is a valid concern? I guess for a mentee to challenge the mentor, even after a mentor acknowledges mentee's concern in a very non-judgmental and receptive way. Just curious. Comment your thoughts below.
フリーレン様はなぜ魔法を集めているのですか？
Good question.
ただの趣味だよ。
そうは思えません。
もっと無気力にダラダラと生きていたんだけどね。
Wow.
気持ち悪い。褒めた魔法を褒めてくれたバカがいた。それだけだよ。
Himmel.
くだらない理由ですね。
そうだね。
Actually, going back to one of the main themes I highlighted for episode 1, temporal perception or perception of time differences, actually it does make sense that to Frieren, she has so much time that there is no urgency, and any perceived urgency for Frieren is arbitrary. She literally has no reason to rush anything that she does. That's probably why she doesn't really collect spells for flying, because she has more than enough time to walk and explore the entire world many times over. But for Fern, it is an actual urgency because there is actual limitation of time and resources. So I guess it is more urgent for Fern, but more arbitrary for Frieren. And that's why Fern is saying that's a silly thing and keep, I guess, questioning Frieren's decision. And also, this is a healthy mentor-mentee dynamic. Again, mentee is not supposed to be mentor 2.0. That defeats the purpose of mentorship. So a mentee and for mentee to rise up to the occasion, you do eventually in a very respectful and non-contrarian way to challenge the authority of your mentor in a very productive way. And that's hard for you to grow. It's the same process for us and our parents and for us and whoever we put on the pedestal. It's an healthy part of growing and developmental process. They found it.
餌を外敵のいない安全な場所に埋めて隠すと言われている。よく埋めた場所を忘れるんだ。
故郷の花でね、とても美しいんだ。僕ほどではないんだけどね。
そろそろ行こうか。
君に見せてあげたい。
そう。
I mean, with all these flashbacks, I'm curious to whether there was like a spark of romance or romantic interest between them. Curious. And it's also talking about selective attention, memory formation or consolidation. I wonder what dictates and influences Frieren's memory recall. Again, who knows how long Frieren has lived until this point in episode 2. But I'm curious to see there has to be a finite neurological network and neurons and brain capacity even for Elf to maintain and retain memories. And we only remember memories based on stimuli. Oh, I remember the restaurants at the trigger of a smell, at the trigger and activation of a taste, of a sight that I remember, the place I went for my first date with my wife, and so on. And so we do recall our memory based on construction and based on how mindful we were and how meaningful the memories were to us. And these are the memories that I remember, big or small. So I'm curious to see what are the significance of these memories for Frieren, aside from part of her ongoing grieving process with Himmel, 26 or 30 years down the road. So I'm curious how memories work for I guess, seemingly immortal beings like elves, since I guess we'll never find out in the real world, and I'll never have an elf as my clients in my clinical practice, but I guess we'll see. Wow. Beautiful.
あるとは思っていたけど遅くなったねヒメル。
懸命に理解できません。
フェルンだって魔法使いになることを諦めなかった。
それは違います。くたって
でも魔法を選んだ。
Deep. Whether we like to admit it or not, whether we recognize it or not, all of us are the accumulation and the sequence of choices we make over time. We become the choices we make over time. And the choices we make define us and define who we become over time. So again, this is a very, very poignant message and theme about identity formation, even here. This is a amazingly deep anime. Wow.
まさかもう一度草月草が見られるなんてね。
Wow.
本当に綺麗。
よし。
あら、可愛らしい。
Kawaii dashi.
それじゃあ行こうか。
Wow. What a beautiful, beautiful end to episode 2. Well, if you derived any benefits and if you discover more about fascinating psychological concepts, emotionality for the human experience and part of the human condition that you never thought about from watching this anime, subscribe. Check out the other podcasts that I have where I interact and converse with some of the smartest people on the planet, Harvard professors, Yale clinicians, a psychologist from the world. And check out the channel and help us by engaging. Leave a comment below. What did you think? And what would you like for me to comment and react next through psychological perspective? And until then, see you again in the next week's train of Discover More. Thanks for tuning in.